Hello, and welcome to this presentation about studying English language A-level at Hills Road. So my name's Jonathan Binfield, and I am the specification leader for English language at Hills. I've been teaching English language since 1994, so I'm quite experienced with it, and we have a very good, experienced and lively and energetic team teaching English language. So if you come to do language here, you might be taught by me or a colleague called Maria Butcher or a new colleague called Ali. Okay. So I'm going to move through to the next slide and why study English language at Hills? Well, we regard this as a analytical and creative subject that's intellectually stimulating. So it is a challenging A-level. So we do want you to sign up for this if you like a challenge, because as I'll explain later, there's a lot of new material that you would get to grips with if you study A-level English language. Okay. So there's lots of challenging concepts, sort of linguistic theory. You'd be engaging in debates, lots of contemporary debates about language. Also, of course, you would develop independent thinking. Now, all of this happens within a supportive environment. Okay. So we, as subject teachers, will support you. We have a lot of experience in supporting students. And we also run what we call an English Plus language workshop. So if you like further support beyond that you get in the classroom, Maria Butcher has been running a very successful English language workshop, which can either be targeted one-to-one or can operate with small groups, and that, you know, that's there really to support you and help you if you want some extra input. Okay, so challenging but supportive is the main message I'd like you to take from that. Okay, so I'm moving on to the next slide. And this is about what the course covers. So I will spend a little bit more time on this slide because there's quite a lot of information packed into it in a sense. So as I've said, studying English language at A-level involves studying some entirely new topics. So it's almost like doing one of those subjects that you've never done before. In some respects. So if you look at the left-hand side of the slide there, you'll see there's a topic, child language development. Okay, now this is something that you have not studied at GCSE. So we look at how children develop their language skills, how they acquire the ability to speak and then eventually to write. So we look into theories that try to explain this, because children will say some things that they really cannot have copied from their parents. So, for example, and this is a real example, a child once said to her mum, "Untrouser me." Now, I don't think that child could have copied that, do you? And also they say things like, I wented into the garden. Why do they do that? I mean, no parent says that. I don't believe. So there has to be something else going on. And that's the sort of thing that we look into in the child language development topic. Okay. Then if I move down underneath the child language development, you'll see there's an image there that's designed to illustrate the language change topic. So, you know, what we're doing there is looking at how the English language has changed over time and how it's still changing today. So the image you've got on the left is actually, it's a bit of text from Geoffrey Chaucer, and it's Middle English. And it's handwritten because that's written before printing. So there was no printing at the time that that text was written. Okay, and then we look at somebody using a modern smartphone, and we're looking at sort of multimodal text with images and with written text. And clearly the advent of the internet and social media have brought about a lot of language change. Okay, so we will look at that topic. It's a major topic in year 13 of the course. Okay. Then if I move across to the right-hand side of the slide, so there's a little diagram there which is designed to illustrate the idea that you will need to do quite a lot of linguistic analysis. So you are, of course, used to analysing texts at GCSE, but at A level you would have to analyse texts in much more linguistic detail. Now, when I say texts, I mean extracts of texts. Okay, you do not study any literary texts in English language. Okay, so so you might be able to pick out some of the terminology used on that slide, and some of them you'll be very familiar with, like sentence and noun. But others, like prepositional phrase, might be a little bit more detailed than you've so far looked into, and it gets even more detailed than that. So you need to understand such things as subordinate clauses, bound morphemes, and unbound morphemes. Now, don't worry if you don't know what those mean, because that's something that you would learn through studying the course. Okay, so I don't want to put you off, but I do want you to be aware that there is a very technical side to English language. Okay, right, and then underneath the linguistic analysis diagram is the language diversity topic. So with the language diversity topic, we are looking at how language varies according to different social circumstances. So for example, language may vary due to the region of the country that you live in. So you're all familiar with the idea that different regions do have different accents and dialects. So as I'm sure you know, the word that's spelt G-R-A-S-S in the north of England is pronounced grass, and in the south of England it's pronounced grass. So I'm making a generalization there about north and south, and there are some exceptions, but and if you were in Scotland, you could hear somebody talk about a wee bairn, meaning a little child. Okay, so there are differences in pronunciation, in vocabulary, and indeed in grammar, and indeed in the way people address each other in different regions of the country. So that's something that we look into. We might also, no, not we might, we will also look at how age is a factor in language use. So if you're watching this, I'm guessing you're about 15 or 16. And as 15 and 16-year-olds, you probably use language in a slightly different way to the way I do. So, there's about 40 years between us. So I will have habits of language use that are different from yours. Gender may well also be a factor. So again, there are theories that suggest that men and women are so fundamentally different that they basically have a completely different conversational style. But there are others who think that those claims are wildly exaggerated and may just be stereotyping. So again, we look into that. Social class may well have an influence on the way language is used. Occupation, clearly, if you're a lawyer, you'll be using language in a way that non-lawyers do not. Okay, so yeah, so language diversity, we're looking at how it varies according to all of these various factors. Okay, now lastly on this slide, there is a little quill and ink symbol there to symbolize creative writing. So you do get to do a piece of original writing for coursework, which is now called non-examined assessment. And you have quite a lot of free choice over what you choose to write. So you can write to tell a story, to persuade, or to inform. You do have to also do an analytical commentary on how you've used language yourself in your creative piece. There's also a task where you do some journalistic writing about a language issue in the exam. Okay, right, so I've spent rather a long time on this slide, but that's because the sort of essence of the course is really contained on this slide. So I'll move through now. And on this slide, I'm just going to talk about the comparisons between English language and the other two Englishes that we offer at Hills Road. Okay, so you can do single English language, or you can do English language and literature combined, or you can do single English literature. Okay, so in both the combined and English literature, you study set literary texts. You don't study any set literary texts at all for English language. Okay, also in those other two subjects there, you study different genres. Now, we also study different genres in English language, but not necessarily literary genres, and only short extracts. Okay. In English language, because we do the topic of language change, we will look at short extracts of texts from at least 1600 to the present day. Okay. If you choose English language and literature combined, most of the texts you do would be 20th century writing and some 21st century writing. If you choose English literature, you get a spread from Shakespeare to the present day. Now, one more comparison we can make between the three Englishes is on creative writing. So as I've said, in English language, you do get the opportunity to do creative writing for coursework. That's also true of the combined course. But if you choose single English literature, there is no creative writing as part of the course. Okay. So if you're trying to decide between which of the three Englishes you want to do, I hope that section has helped. One final thing I'll say about this is that it is possible to do single English language and single English literature. But there is an obvious issue with that, which is that some university admissions officers might see that as a slightly narrow program of study for A-level, to do two Englishes, particularly if you're only studying 3 A-levels. Okay. In terms of the course, there's actually very little overlap. I mean, studying Hamlet and studying child language, you can imagine, is completely different. But nevertheless, it could look like a narrow program. So I think you're probably only going to choose both single language and single literature if you're fairly clear about what you want to do in higher education and perhaps beyond. Most students who want a bit of both would simply choose the combined course. Okay. All right, so I'll move on now. And this slide is about the skills you gain through studying English language A-level. So firstly, and very importantly, you develop clear, coherent writing skills. This is probably true whichever English you study, but it's particularly emphasized in English language. You're also developing the ability to use the right language for the right context. So whether it's written, electronic or spoken, you're able to select the appropriate language style to use. You develop skills to analyze any kind of text, not just a literary text, any kind of text. So that really puts you in a position to spot the subtext. What do they really mean? So if we think of examples from real life, when politicians of whatever party make statements or promises, what do they really mean? And you'll be equipped to tell because you've been used to studying text in detail to bring out underlying meanings. Okay, and you can apply it not just to political statements, but to advertising, marketing, and so on. So it's a skill that's really applicable to everyday life. Okay, and whatever university course you choose, having those skills of close reading is going to stand you in good stead. So many subjects at university like to see that skill. So independent research. So for English language A-level, you also do an independent language investigation. And that really sets you up with research skills. So when you do your language investigation, you have to collect data. So the English language investigation is quite a scientific approach to language. So you may be making your own recordings of spoken language, or you may be doing some research and selecting some written language. And then you will also do research into theories and studies about language that will help you to analyze your data. Okay, so that project really helps develop those independent research skills, which are valued by so many universities and businesses. Okay. And finally, you'll be really alert to the way language changes in society. And I think having your finger on the pulse of the way language changes is another thing that can give you a head start. Okay. And then assessment. So this slide goes through our approach to assessment in English language, and also all of the subjects that we offer in the English and Media department. So you have 6 key assessment points in each year. Now, there will be smaller ones as well, but we have sort of 6 key assessment points. Now, the assessments are scaffolded, which means that we give you support in how to write, say, an essay about whether men and women speak in a similar way, for example. Now, at the beginning of the course, you get a lot of scaffolding, and gradually over time, the scaffolding becomes more light touch, because eventually, of course, you are developing the skills to do this on your own, because you'll be doing it on your own in the real exam. So we start with scaffolding, and gradually you develop to the point where you don't need it. So we do modelling, and we show you sample essays. We do quite a lot of analysing and improving previous essays that have been written. So you get some anonymous essays, and you look at the strengths of that essay and ways of improving it, and then you apply that to your own work. Okay, we also do, so as well as getting assessment and feedback from us, from the teachers, you also do some peer and self-assessment. Yeah, okay, and then, as I've said, you sort of reflect on that and you can reapply it for yourself. Okay, so that's assessment, and I'll move on to support. So I've mentioned already, but I'll reiterate that in class you're supported by subject experts teaching you. So yeah, and we're quite acutely aware that this year particularly there's quite a transition between GCSE and A-level, and we're aware that although you had to do lots of assessments at school and you were assessed on those, it wasn't quite the same as it would have been in a normal year that's not impacted by a pandemic. So yeah, and we're aware that everyone will have had different experiences. You're coming into us from different schools, and there's quite a variety of experience out there. So I think what we want to say is, please don't worry. We are interested early on in finding out a little bit about your experience at GCSE and helping you to make that transition into A-level study. And as I've mentioned, a major factor in helping you is the scaffolding we give you in the early work. There's peer group support available from fellow students, and we also have the English Plus sessions, and these are for one-to-one support or small groups. We also give support for university applications for those who are interested in applying for English-related subjects. Okay. Yes, and on this slide we're talking about extension and enrichment. So some of this has been a little bit difficult, as you can imagine, during the pandemic, but it's something we're very keen to get back to. So so visiting speakers, so we really want to get back to bringing in visiting speakers from outside, and we really hope that in your year this will be possible. So we've had, for example, lecturers come in to talk about their research. So we've had an academic in the linguistics department from Kent University who's come in and given a presentation about her research on the language of memes. So that's sort of very up-to-date linguistic research. It's a great thing about the subject. Language is always changing, so there's always something new, something cutting edge that we can look at. And we hope very much to get back to taking you on trips. So we've taken students to the British Library, where there are excellent resources for English language A-level students, and we intend to sort of reintroduce those visits. And we've also helped out researchers at both Cambridge University and Anglia Ruskin University. We've helped them out with research projects in language. So we offer you additional reading. So I said earlier that you don't have set texts, and you don't, but we do give you a reading list that can extend your knowledge of the subject. And you'll notice, if you go on the right section of the website, that we've put up some reading for you to do over the summer before you join us in September. Yes, opportunities to write for subject-specific publications. So last academic year, one of our students did get an article published in an English and media publication. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So these are about results. Now, these are based on a 3-year average, and they don't take into account, they don't have this year's data in there, and they don't have last year's either. So they're the 3 previous years. It's an average. So the B to A star grades has been 66% on the 3-year average. I think it's just worth noting how higher that is than the national average there. And the E to A star is 100% on that national average. Okay, right, student destinations. So this is about courses taken at university by students who have studied English language. So you'll notice that the first few there are very related to the subject. So English language with linguistics, for example, you are ideally prepared for that. English language on its own, or linguistics on its own, you're very, very prepared for those degree courses. And there are a number of students this year who've applied for those courses. I can think of one student, for example, who's actually applied for linguistics with Spanish. She did English language alongside Spanish. So she's quite interested in comparative linguistics. Journalism, of course, English language is a very good subject for journalism, but you'll notice that English language students also apply for it. So we've even had students who studied English language end up doing marine biology. So you're not, by taking English language, you're certainly not limited to choosing those subjects at the top of the list. Yeah, and of course you'd be choosing English language as usually part of a 3 A-level program. So it's a good subject to, if you're more interested in studying history, for example, English language is a perfectly good subject to facilitate that. Okay. So thank you very much for taking the time to view this presentation, and we'll look forward to seeing you in English language classes in September. Thank you very much.